Bendy and the Ink Machine was a cultural phenomena. Back when it first came out, it took the YouTube landscape by storm. You'd be hard-pressed to find a gaming YouTuber who wasn't playing this game. I'm sure many of you have heard of it, seen it, reviled it. Most traveling here, from wherever you end up finding this video, should have some baseline understanding of what this game is. But, if you don't, allow me to catch you up to speed. Bendy and the Ink Machine is a first-person horror puzzle game. In it, you are placed in the shoes of Henry Stein, someone who once worked at Joey Drew Studios. You receive a letter from your old partner, Joey Drew, inviting you back to the studio. He has something to show you. Instead of the familiar studio he's accustomed to, Henry is instead greeted with boundless possibilities swelling all about the corridors. Cartoon characters brought to life only to be gutted, foreboding messages written in ink all over the walls, and the ever-present ink machine, the source of all of our questions. This sounds like a great premise, doesn't it? I agree. It is a great premise. However, I detest this game and I intend to make you understand why. But before I do that, I must illustrate how much potential this game had. To make monstrosities out of nothing but ink, abominations that abided by the rules of rubber hose animation instead of the rules of our world. Imagine a humanoid mass of ink that is gallanting after you in a small corridor, clinging to the ceiling with one limb while another is attached to the wall and two more are attached to the floor. And it's trying to talk to you, trying to tell you something, but you can't understand it. Does this not sound compelling? Well, too bad. That's not in the game, it's not in anything, I made it up. The ideas and initial premise that Bendy is based and built upon are fantastic ideas. They are inkwells of creativity, boundless possibilities seep from it and onto the rotting wooden floor. And the white face with the red shirt, the puppet, it looks at the possibilities and it laughs. I hope you'll become as profoundly maddened by this game and its squandered, wasted potential as I am.
All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
The game starts off okay. It's a short chapter. When Bendy originally released, this was basically the demo. The rest of the chapters would be paid for DLC, and the first one would be a free appetizer to entice you into the main course. The game does a good job at introducing you to its atmosphere. The harsh, bright lighting clashing against the dulling yellows and the blacks of the drawn environment, combined with the dust particles floating about, it isn't too bad. I actually quite like this. One thing that is hard to bash is the early environmental design. I think that is one of the things that still holds up when it's put under scrutiny. The actual gameplay of this chapter, however, leaves much to be desired. The entire thing is one big fetch quest, a term I will refrain from using from this point onward. It's simply too applicable, with a chase sequence at the end. You come across the Ink Machine, a set piece that, in this specific instance, actually looks quite nice. Why is there a big machine connected to a bunch of pipes being suspended above a gigantic hole? What is its importance? Where does the hole lead? What makes it so significant that the game's subtitle is, "And the Ink Machine"? It leaves a lot of questions, and I think that's good. It's a great way to entice your player to delve in even deeper. The rest of the chapter focuses on artifacts to turn the Ink Machine on. This is where Bendy's gameplay loop begins to show itself. Get things, bring them back to a place you've been before, activate a switch. This is prevalent in every chapter after this one in some form or fashion, and it is just obnoxious. If this was just a problem the first chapter had, I would give the game some slack. The first chapter was free at one point, right? It was basically just a test to see if people were even interested in this game in the first place. Where's the harm in putting out something that is just a bit half-baked? Even though they should really be putting their best foot forward and really should be putting a bunch of effort into the first thing to see if people want to play their thing and whatever. They can always just patch it up later, make it more engaging. But they didn't. And they don't. They update the first chapter, they change the first chapter dramatically. They add areas, they add sequences, they change character designs. But you want to know what they don't do? Fix the core problem with Chapter 1, the incredibly boring and dull gameplay that facilitates its existence. And yes, I'm aware that Mike Mood has gone on record talking about how they don't want to innovate with their actual gameplay, but instead innovate in brands and story and whatever else. I'm not asking for innovation. I'm asking for something compelling. Running around an admittedly well-designed environment quickly loses its charm when what you're doing in that environment is so menial. At the end of it all, you get the chase sequence. You place the 6 items on the pedestals and activate the switch. You try to go back to the ink machine and Bendy jumps at you. Ink begins filling the halls and iron shutters close off areas they don't want you running to. I hate the sequence. The urgency is completely fake. There is none. If you stand there, nothing will happen. Not one thing. Ink does not continually fill the room. Bendy does not chase you. It is all contingent on you believing that there is a very scary threat, and both you getting swallowed up by the ink and the weird ink demon behind you. And the music tries very desperately to sell you on this fact. But it doesn't matter. Do you know how easy it would have been to just make the ink slowly climb up and drown you? Or have Bendy chase you? They do that later, why not now? It's stupid. Don't craft fake circumstances when you could so easily make real ones. Anyway, you finish that sequence by getting to the exit and falling down a hole. You then come across what used to be a pentagram after chopping some stuff with an axe. And then you collapse after some images with zero real relevance whatsoever flash on your screen. Hallucinating doesn't even come back until chapter 4, and they use it for cheap jump scares then. Ugh, it only gets worse from here.
Oh, my head. What happened? Well, I guess there's only one thing to do. Press on.
It was at this time that I realized the game forgets your audio settings every time you relaunch it. After getting blasted by incredibly loud noise, you have to go into the settings and fix it. I have no idea why they can't nail down something as basic as remembering what you set the audio to last time you played, but whatever, I guess. You start off this chapter exactly where you left off, waking up, grabbing your axe, continuing on. The new goal is to get your bearings and figure out how to get out of here. One thing that is pretty fun to do is break stuff with your axe. They can make satisfying smashing mechanics at least. The sound is perfect for what they're going for, a very meaty thwack accented by wood splintering apart. The sound design in this game is pretty great in general. Whether they were created in-house or pre-made assets, they were utilized effectively. But that fun doesn't last for long. Again, the core gameplay loop rears its ugly head. Collect X amount of things, press a switch. Here it isn't really collecting, it's pressing 3 switches and then pressing a different kind of switch, but the functionality is identical. When I say this design philosophy of do several identical tasks, press a switch, move forward is ever present, I really mean it. And God, does it drive me insane. You can really feel the lack of creativity oozing from every orifice of this game like ink secretes from the walls and ceiling. The same thing, over and over again, barely iterating. It makes me want to scream. How did people ever find this compelling? How did I ever find this compelling? Also, you come across Sammy Lawrence for the first time. And this is very important, so keep it in mind. Henry calls out to him. Hello?
Excuse me, can you help
Can
me?
you help me?
Hello?
Hello? You open the door and break a few wooden planks. You are now in the main area in which this chapter takes place. There are several things that immediately piss me off.
It's really dark in here.
No, it isn't. Everything is incredibly overexposed. It shouldn't be because of my settings either. I ran everything at its default besides the sound. Darkness is something that this game lacks a lot of, funnily enough, and I'm not quite sure I understand why. In a horror game, darkness is one of the tools that can elevate a situation into something truly scary. It's the fear of what may lay in the dark. It's the fear of not understanding why something is the way that it is. It's the fear of the unknown. Not knowing and not understanding is what makes us the most scared, and this tool is hardly utilized. Ever. And the combat. Oh God, the combat. It is some of the most uninspired, unnecessary combat in a game I have ever had the displeasure of experiencing. It's walk up, click, walk back, walk up, click, walk back. Sometimes the walking up part isn't even necessary, you just walk back and click. Why did they think this was a good and fun addition to the game? After finding some keys in a trash can, you play a little ditty on some instruments to open a secret door and drain some ink.
One down.
He's staring at you now. You're being attacked. Why not say something to him? Why not call out for help? Again? You did it once, why can't you do it again? It wouldn't be hard. Hey, mister, can you help? Are you even listening? I'm being attacked, help! Would something like that not heighten the tension of the situation? Would that not make the scene more memorable? The ominous, masked Sammy Lawrence standing above you, indulging in your despair as the dregs of the ink come to drag you into the abyss. But no. For some reason, Henry is incapable of speech now. Why? Would him saying something to Sammy not heighten the tension? Would it not give Henry more personality? Sammy too? Why does he not speak? It makes no sense, and sure, maybe I'd forgive it if he didn't say something to Sammy before. But he did. He did say something. He's called out for help before. And don't give me, oh, he tried once. He just knows he's not going to help. There's no point in even trying. That previous interaction is set up in such a way that makes it believable that he could have just not heard Henry. Why would Henry instantly jump to the conclusion that Sammy doesn't care instead of the much more believable conclusion that he simply didn't hear? It drives me up a wall, it makes me feel insane, and to top it all off, we get more rancid combat. A new area they added for what reason? I'm not sure. It's becoming obvious to me that the additions to their chapters were not done to enhance the chapter in any way, but to pad for time. You get the second valve and drain the rest of the ink. You gain access to one of the only good things this chapter has, the Build Our Machine Easter egg. One thing I will forever cherish is the community of incredibly talented music creators that this game fostered. I love a lot of the songs that were made for this game, especially Build Our Machine. Once you're done jamming out, you walk down the hallway to try and exit, and surprise, you are clubbed on the head and knocked out cold. You wake up bound into some wooden post thing while Sammy monologues at you. Hey Henry, now would be a good time to say something, right? Maybe cut this lunatic off and try to ask what he's doing there, where you are, what's going on. He seems to know a sight more than you do. Ah, but your mouth must be tied up, right? Is that the excuse I'm going to be given when such a thing was never communicated to me? Not good enough. It's another sequence with fake tension. Loud music, Sammy just turned into a stretched PNG of black ink. Quick, go before you also get turned into a stretched PNG of black ink, but you sit there and nothing happens. Just like the first chapter. When you eventually do progress down the hallway, your axe breaks arbitrarily, and you are jump scared by Bendy. Now he actually chases you. Wow. And then you get to a door with a wooden plank stopper, and for whatever reason, that actually stops him. Even though he has been shown to walk through walls later, you can hear him pounding on the door. Why doesn't he just, walk in? Whatever, who cares? Boris is here now. Wait, how is that possible? Wasn't he dead? In chapter 2. Chapter 3 begins with yet another do several identical tasks, press switch, move forward. This time you're getting Boris some soup, and in return he will give you a lever. This lever is then inserted into a slot next to a door, and progression begins. We are then treated to a very small snippet of what the game could have been. Ominous machinery with dubious purpose, loud mechanical screeching and hissing, something crawling and smashing things up above. What does it all mean? What is it all connected to? What is its purpose? All supplemented by actual darkness. Darkness that must be traversed with a flashlight. They introduced the mechanic of the flashlight and only use it twice. Once is this time, where you barely have it for 2 minutes, and another is later on, where it is even more quaint and, quite frankly, unnecessary. They should have leaned into the flashlight way more. They should have had the flashlight be a permanent fixture in Henry's abilities, something you get early on in Chapter 1 that is used to both traverse areas and combat ink creatures. What if, instead of having some of the most uninspired combat in a video game ever, you used the flashlight to ward off sickly, ink-congealed beasts, maybe shining the light in specific spots, having the ability to focus the light in their eyes, something like that. And maybe you're never able to truly kill these things. Eventually they trudge back up from cracks in the wood and come hunting for you again. It would take a lot of power away from the player, thereby making it scarier, while also making the combat leagues more engaging. But those are just my ideas, and the flashlight is taken away by Boris, and you don't see it again until much farther in the future. Yet again, we are treated to a striking set piece with no real relevance, and another do several identical tasks, press switch, move forward. This time you have to remove plushies from some machinery in order to move shelves stacked full of other plushies that are blocking a door. Does it not strike some as incredibly on the nose that they started selling Bendy plushies very soon after this chapter was released?
Bendy plushies are here. That's kind of cool.
Okay, so I'm sitting here recording this, right? And this at this point has actually bothered me a lot more than I anticipated it to. So you notice how these plushies right here are all plushies that we haven't seen before, plushies that didn't exist before. The only ones before were Bendy. They were just Bendy. They were just Bendy. You pick up one at the beginning, and it's one of the artifacts or whatever that you put on the thing to do the thing, and the end ink machine sarks, etc., whatever. But these didn't exist before. These haven't existed before. We haven't seen a Boris or Alice plush, to my knowledge. I'm almost certain this is the first time they show up, and they are shoved so prominently in your face. Look at this shot. Look at the shot that I've zoomed in on. It's literally just 2 rows. It's 2 rows, and only one of them has a Bendy plushie on it. That one, right there, right there. And that's it. That's just so telling to me. I feel like this is weird. I feel like this is weird. And not only is this like they made the product announcement, right? They made the product announcement video. And I don't think at the time there was a merch link to the thing on the game, but now if you launch it, which I'm going to right now, there is in fact a merchandise store right here at the top right that you click, and it takes you immediately to the Bendy merch store. I don't know, man. I've clicked on it before, and it's just taking forever to load. Whatever. I don't really care. They made a product first. The idea was to make a product. They wanted to make money. They didn't care about they didn't care about like actually making a cool game for anyone. Also, this really exemplifies that the volume is supposed to see. Do you see that? Do you see how it just whenever I clicked down one time, the volume when it launches sucks. This game is bad. I hate this game.
Once past that, you are treated to the introduction of Alice Angel. It's long-winded, and an attempt at some sort of jump scare. She breaks the glass for some reason. She doesn't try to get you through this glass. She doesn't send anything through this glass. She just breaks it to break it. Maybe to leave? A much better way to do this reveal is have her jump up like she already does, and instead of smashing the window, she monologues at you through it while moving about inside the room she's in, leaving once she's done. But, you know, that requires effort, so of course they don't do that. Black screen it is.
I see you. Now we come to the
Boris comes back and hands you a pipe. Thanks, Boris. Now this part, this is when the game truly becomes a slog. Enemies that take more than 1 or 2 hits to kill. Good God. Not only is it a lame jump scare, but it accents how rancid this game's combat truly is. Walk back and click. Walk back and click. But you do it more. Yeehaw. It's so painfully dull with a lack of both tension and urgency. And there is so much of it in this chapter. The part where Alice Angel sends you on errands, her words not mine, exemplifies a lot of problems this game has. The lack of forethought when crafting events in the story.
You know, it was a complete accident. We'd like to say we knew exactly what was going to happen, but really, at the end of the day, we knew the beginning and we knew the end. Everything that happened in between was kind of developed as we went along. An example would be in Chapter 2, we had a poster of Alice Angel fan art, and they just fell in love with the character, and there was nothing explaining what this character was.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were getting ready to jump into Chapter 3, and it made it really obvious that Chapter 3 should be about Alice Angel, right?
The horrible combat that is constantly shoved down your throat, and the do several identical tasks, press switch, move forward structure that facilitates doing anything. This chapter particularly showcases that last point. The main goal of this chapter is to do 5 separate errands for Alice, all of which consist of go to a different floor, collect X amount of things, cogs, batteries, ink, whatever, go back to the floor Alice is on, deposit. This is where Bendy's gameplay loop begins to show itself. Get things, bring them back to a place you've been before, activate a switch. And it seems like they were placed in the game out of order. There's this odd instance of stilted dialogue that seems out of place.
I'll make this simple. Look for valve pads. Turn the little wheels. Then bring me their power cores. Please don't make me regret sparing you. I can always change my mind.
This is clearly meant to be the first one, but was delivered to me third. Why is she talking about how I shouldn't make her regret sparing me when I've already been doing her dirty work? It doesn't make any sense. Those tasks also deliver you a new combat mechanic, different weapons. They don't do anything apart from making you take more or less mouse clicks to kill something. Riveting. The tasks themselves are all practically copy and paste versions of each other and take up the bulk of the entire chapter. I'll save us both time and gloss over all of that, and instead, talk about something else. While doing these tasks, Bendy has a chance to spawn and try to kill you. What it seems to me is a very poor man's attempt at a Mr. X-like figure from Resident Evil 2. In that game, you are constantly patrolled by an unkillable titan of a man, whose motivation you barely know. He will stop at nothing to get to you, even destroying parts of the map irreversibly at times. Bendy, however, does none of that. He will very, very rarely spawn, and to combat him, you simply just jump in a closet. Maybe I just got lucky with this playthrough, but the past several times I've tortured myself with this game, I've had basically no encounters with him. When the chapter was released, I remember having to deal with him a lot. Maybe they toned him down by a comical degree. Maybe I was a stupid kid taking way too long to do anything, and thus gave him much more time to show up. I don't know. The point is, he isn't scary and isn't threatening. Once you have done all of that menial labor, you... What? Why isn't the elevator going down? Oh no. No, 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 no. No, you're kidding. It won't go down. It's not going down. Why isn't it going down? Is there something wrong? Did I forget something? Please. Hello? What's wrong? Boris, buddy, come on. Do something. Do anything. What is wrong? What is going on? Why won't the elevator go down? Yep, that's right. If you return to the lift before Alice finishes her dialogue, You are soft locked. You have to do the entire chapter over again. And no, exiting the save and reloading does not fix it, because when Alice finishes talking, the game autosaves, forever damning you to the timeline in which you have to restart. It's a known issue on the wiki. It's a big enough and known enough issue that it is listed on the wiki, and it goes unfixed. Are you kidding me? Why? What even causes this? How is that even possible? How could something so inept, something so glaring, not be patched after years? Years. This game has been released for more than half of a decade now, and it's not fixed. Ugh. I'm not going to lie. That made me furious. It still makes me furious how such a bug can go unfixed for such a long time. But nevertheless, we continue onward. You are on a journey with me, dear friend, one that I will see through until the end, even if it kills me. For now, however, we are going to take a short rest. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the sweet, mellow tunes.
All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
Luckily, I had a save from a previous time playing. I don't think this video would have seen the light of day if it weren't for that. Thank you, past me, for torturing yourself all those years ago. You start this chapter off in the elevator. It's destroyed now. Here's what normally happens when the game doesn't soft lock.
Have you ever wondered what heaven is like? Now come down and bring me back my forest! Give him to me! Yes! I'll take him! You're dead!
The first thing you're treated to is a set piece I find genuinely compelling. It's obviously meant to represent the overworking of the employees at this company, and how they were treated terribly by upper management. What this means for the greater plot, I don't know. I'm pretty sure there isn't a greater plot. In any case, I like this set piece, and wish they did more of this kind of environmental storytelling. Some weird ink sculptures later, we are treated to our first do several identical tasks, press switch move forward of the chapter, and do you see what I mean? Do you see how cheap and putrid these stupid jump scares are? There's more identical to this later. I'm not going to subject you to those. Jump scares are something to be earned, to be built up through great suspense and atmosphere and threat. Great media will go another step further, completely subverting expectations and not delivering a jump scare at all, making you sit with that horrible sense of dread. That is true horror. This is garbage peddled for babies. It is a writhing mass of congealed muck, parts black, brown, and green, all synthesized down in the deepest parts of the sewers. More do several identical tasks, press switch, Move forward, gameplay later, we find ourselves in some chasm. Why is this under a studio for animating? I'm not sure. Is this a new mechanic? A new way to aid in puzzle solving? Granted, it's pretty bog standard and simplistic, but it's something. This is what I want more of. Good puzzles in games don't have to be complex. In essence, you can boil down almost any puzzle in any game to do several identical tasks, press switch, move forward. And I understand that. The problem with Bendy and the Ink Machine is the presentation. Take this puzzle from Lost in Vivo. You come across a room with 3 heads. You can interact with them, and there was a locked door directly across from the entrance. Obviously a puzzle, right? So you continue on and find notes that all relate to leaving the plane of existence through one's own actions, so to speak. All of the ways mentioned refer to the direction the head was pointed in when they died. The solution to the puzzle has been found. You can boil that down to do several identical tasks, press switch, move forward, right? But the difference here is the presentation. This puzzle is more memorable than any force a guy into a specific spot, than any go hit the wheel on 2 different pumps, than any shove a book back into its socket, because the presentation of those puzzles are unmemorable. Who is going to think back on hitting drainage pipes until they line up fondly? They're going to think, man, that was pretty tedious. But when they remember the head puzzle, they're going to think, man, that was pretty morbid. Do you not want something like that? Puzzles don't have to be tedious and they don't have to be complex. Utilize your presentation and make something cool. After making a cog out of some ink, you get to watch as the cart slowly makes its way toward you. You get on it and have another moment of forced, fake tension where they act as though the cart is going to break. It isn't. This then leads directly into another jump scare hallucination. This is all jammed into the first not even 10 minutes of the chapter. Are they running out of what little ideas they already had? I guess you could argue the hallucination was brought on by the ink machine, but why has it never made that happen before? What caused the first one? Hey Henry, it's a group of very obviously alive creatures. Why don't you try communicating with them? Try saying hi. Ask them what they're doing. Anything like that? No? Okay. They want to have a silent protagonist that also talks when it's convenient. You can't have it both ways. Pick one or the other. A silent protagonist would have made some of the moments in this game make much more sense. When Sammy is standing above you, when Alice is talking to you, and this moment right here are a few examples. Remember how I said you only get to use the flashlight 2 times? This is the other time. Another cheap jump scare right here. Again, not even 10 minutes into the game, and they have already tried to bombard you with 3 jump scares, all of which were not earned. It's pathetic. They are trying to be a horror game so desperately, without realizing what makes horror games good in the first place. Why doesn't Bendy want to kill you now? Nothing has changed since the last chapter, but for some reason, in this chapter, he's going to be playful with us? Do we ever get an explanation as to why? No, obviously not. And there goes the flashlight, never to be seen again. Goodbye forever, flashlight. I'll miss you and what you could have done for this game. The next segment is about carnival games. You have to beat several carnival games in order to progress. The problem with that is the only indication that the way forward is the carnival games is a voice memo. Something you could easily just skip out on like I did. And when you do eventually play these games and beat 2 of them, Alice discourages you from continuing on. It's like saying to the player, hey, stop doing this. You're wasting time. This isn't the solution. You know what would change that, however? Some sort of indication that you are actually making progress by playing those carnival games. But there isn't any. So instead of Alice taunting you, which is clearly what they intended, she makes it seem like what you are doing is wrong. One simple change, like lights turning on whenever you beat one of the games, something, would fix the problem. Instead, you can end up spending much more time here than you need to, all because of the game's terrible communication. It's stupid. After the carnival games, you go through a series of more riveting quest things. The first is a very poorly thought out stealth section with really poor stealth mechanics. You can easily just charge past the enemies anyway, so who cares? The second is a boss fight that has its basis in a good idea, but it's poorly executed and unfun to fight. A carnival attraction imbued with the vengeful soul of its creator? Super cool idea.
I built this park. It was to be a masterpiece. My masterpiece. And now you think you can just throw me out? Trample me to the dust and forget me? No! This is my park. My glory. You may think I'm wrong, but I'm still here.
A super cool idea bogged down by garbage gameplay. Think the worst kind of wait for the weak point to be exposed, hit, repeat until dead. The third and final one is yet another stealth section, but I believe the character hunting you down is actually faster than you, so staying out of line of sight is more important this time. Still pretty unnecessary though. Oh, and Bendy kills him for some reason. Who knows why? The chapter goes on to conclude with another boss fight. The really unfun wait for the weak point to be exposed, hit, repeat until dead makes its triumphant return. This boss fight is a bit more engaging, however, because each hit makes Boris do something different. Better, but not by much. 3 or 4 hits and he's dead. Then Alice runs out from the place Boris did. She was nearby, apparently? That doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't she just stay back on the sidelines super far away like she did the first time? Whatever, I guess. A different Alice kills her. It's almost over. Thank God.
I know that song.
Everyone knows that song.
One thing I notice about this chapter is that the voice acting for Henry sounds off.
Who are you? Why are you here?
I was invited by an old friend. And now I can't leave.
Looks like it's really dark up ahead. Let's find some light.
Was that him?
Boris! No, what has she done to you?
Not these guys again. I better stay out of sight.
Well, I guess there's only one thing to do. Press on.
Look, I know where we have to go, but it's not gonna be pleasant.
All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
I'm not sure if this is just a me thing. You decide for yourself. The chapter starts off with a long monologue delivered by Alice. Its purpose is to give us a glimpse into her and Tom's character, I guess. This sequence is overly long if that was all it wanted to do. It tries to pretend like it's world building, but in actuality, everything Alice has said are things you either already knew or that were easily inferred. The ink creatures right on the walls? Wow, cool. They emerge from the ink randomly? Wow, dead Alice already told us that. The second conversation you have with her is stilted in such an annoying way. Here, listen.
I know you're watching me. It's just a little creepy.
You're the one that writes on the walls.
We all do. For some poor souls down here, it's the only way they can be heard. But you don't want to touch the ink for too long. It can claim you, pull you back. That's how I met Tom. I was messing with things I shouldn't have been, and he was there.
The conversation does not flow naturally. She's evasive 1 minute. She doesn't tell you exactly what she was messing with, and she says that Tom was just there.
Why do you call him Tom?
He just seems to respond to it.
He just seems to respond to it. Okay, so did you list generic male names until he finally paid attention to you? Because when it's conveyed in this vague manner, that's what it sounds like. She could have easily said that he wrote it on the walls with some ink, carved it into some dirt, signed it out to her, had some form of name tag, but instead she stays elusive. Also, how does her writing on the walls connect with messing with things she shouldn't be? Is she actually referring to being pulled back into the ink? Why can't she be specific about what she was doing? Why be so unnecessarily vague?
Well, I don't think he's very fond of me.
Let me show you something. A while back, I was mapping out one of the upper levels when I noticed something reflecting off a piece of glass. I held up the glass, looked through, and on the wall behind me was a hidden message. Right there, in plain sight. So I kept looking, and found more and more messages everywhere in the studio. But you can't see them with your eyes. Only through this. Take a look. I don't know who's leaving them, but I think they know how to get out of here.
Where does it all lead to?
Nowhere. I followed them for a long time. Just leads me in circles. I don't think I'm meant to leave this place, Henry. But maybe you are.
Then, once Henry talks about how he doesn't think Tom is very fond of him, Alice instantly brushes it off and gives him a Lens of Truth-esque item. I completely forgot I even had it. That isn't relevant for this point, though, because Alice thinks it's very important. She thinks it could be the key to getting out of here, and she hands it off to you. Why does that matter?
Alice, please let me out of here.
Tom thinks you're dangerous.
And what do you think?
I think you're the hope I've been waiting for.
She instantly accuses you of being dangerous immediately after handing it off. And when you press her on that, she's like, well, Tom might think you're dangerous, but I think you're our new hope. So why the outburst then? The dialogue is so awkward, and it isn't the fault of the voice actress, not by a long shot. She does a fine job with what she's given. It's absolutely the script. The dialogue has never been this bad before. I have no idea what happened here. It feels rushed. Tom does something stupid, and they are forced to leave you, providing you the only part of the game where the Lens of Truth is necessary for progression. Also, if an iron pipe can break all of that wood so quickly, an axe could too. You could argue the reason Tom doesn't set you free is because he wants you to die back there, but if that's the case, why doesn't Alice combat the decision at all? Not even a little bit. This is your new hope, Alice, and you're going to give up on him that easily? I don't get it. It's to force a moment of tension, and to get you accustomed with the new toy you've been given. Remember, that toy is so unnecessary I didn't use it once for the rest of the chapter. The pipe is a 2-click weapon. Yay. Yet another moment where giving Henry a voice makes something contradictory. Remember back in chapter 2 where he yelled at a guy to try and get his attention? Why not do that here? You want to meet up with him, right? So why not even try? This segment is yet another good idea squandered by lackluster gameplay. A gigantic mascot hand is rising from the depths of the ink, trying to clamp down and smash both you and your buggy. A fantastic premise! How does that culminate into gameplay? Well, your buggy gets jammed and you have to smack some ink blobs. And you do that several times. Several times. Several times. Several times. Several times. Several times. Several After all of that, you reach some settlement thing, where it's revealed that Sammy is still alive. His entrance sees him smashing 3 planks with an axe in very rapid succession. And Tom couldn't do that. Why? And Alice didn't push back on that. Why? Sammy's voice also sounds completely different. The voice actor is the same, I'm sure, but they've put out-of-place filters over it. He didn't have that in Chapter 2. Here's another comparison.
Betrayed, abandoned. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And you left me to rot. Why? Why?
Not now, for our Lord is calling to us, my little sheep. The time of sacrifice is at hand. And then I will finally be freed from this prison, this inky, dark abyss I call a body.
Sheep, sheep, sheep. It's time for sleep. Sheep, sheep, sheep. It's time for sleep.
If the reason is he isn't fully formed yet or something, I'd understand that. But his model is identical to the one from before. You'd think, if he hadn't been fully reformed, that they would at least try to convey that to you. As it stands, he just sounds different for no reason. Then Sammy does some predictable fake-out thing, but it turns out that you're fine, actually, and you gear up for more combat. I'm going to skip over this for the most part. I'm sure you understand my stance on this game's combat by now. The one thing I will mention was when both Alice and Boris got stuck on the dock for half of the fight. Why does the dock completely break their pathing? Who knows, but it did. Respawning in the sequence is super damaging for the immersion as well. Nothing resets or regresses when you die. It's very clear that you just teleport over to the Bendy statue. Come on. Really? Really? Another lame jump scare, and a way to get rid of your means of defense. They are so scared to let you have an axe for more than 2 seconds. I don't get it. It's another really lame stealth segment. You can run past all of them the entire time and be completely fine. Some rooms they instantly lose you in too, for whatever reason. Another cool fact, if you die while holding a wad of ink, you don't lose it. So it's effectively a teleport back to the start. There was forethought when programming this game's mechanics. I assure you, they put thought into this game. I promise, they really thought this game out. They really did! The final boss fight. To its credit, the boss fight does not focus on waiting for a weak point or anything like that. You smash some levers, and then you make him run into some pipes, and then you slot in a film reel, and he's dead. Not exactly a good or fun fight, but there was more put into it than the previous two. And this ending. My god, this ending. I don't want to speak a word on it. It's terrible, it's lazy, it's pathetic, it's a wet towel, it doesn't conclude a thing. Yeah, maybe that's what they were going for. Sure. I'm sure that's what they think they did. I'm sure that's what they want their fans to believe, that the answers are all there, just find them. They aren't there, they never were there. They parade this around and pretend like there's an answer to the puzzle, that there was a correct answer to everything. No, there isn't. There never was, there never will be. They stole fans' theories and built them into the game. They lied about planning the entire story beforehand. They lied. The creators lied to us. A familiar mantra, isn't it? How am I supposed to believe there are answers to this puzzle when the puzzle was jerry-rigged together throughout the development? The ending means nothing. It will never mean anything, and I'm sickened that I ever once thought of this game in a positive light. I'm done. Goodbye. Good riddance. That was my video on Bendy and Ink Machine. I hope you enjoyed it. I spent a lot of time on it, so hopefully it was good. There are a couple things that I would like to talk about that I didn't mention in the video. Mostly things like about the story and mostly things about the story and some other minor nitpicks that I have with it. I would like to, before I say anything, if you are able to enjoy Bendy and the Ink Machine, I'm happy for you. I'm glad. Part of my problems with Bendy and the Ink Machine as a whole is the story. I didn't really talk about it in this video. I mentioned it a couple times, especially the ending, obviously. But I have a lot of problems with it, and most of them come down to how nothingy the chapter feels. Each chapter is mostly comprised of like your beginning where a little bit of story happens, and then you go into the mid chapter, which is just a bunch of fetch questing nonsense, and then the end where something big happens or a reveal happens or whatever. Most of the story is told through cassette tapes, and I'm sure that's fine for a lot of people, but for me, I don't really enjoy that at all. I kind of like to see the story unfold before me, be it through the environment, be it through cutscenes, be it through dialogue, be it through whatever. The cassette tapes just don't do it for me. Maybe it's because of my ADHD, maybe it's because of whatever, but that doesn't do it for me. And I understand that it does it for some people, but I didn't talk about the cassette tapes outside of whenever you need to. For a reason, I wasn't really interacting with them. Another thing I have gripes with is the ending and the use of the Lens of Truth item thing. I think it actually has a name. I don't really care. So my problems with it is, I think, again, it's a really great idea. The entire thing, if you don't know, that item is something that Henry uses to talk with himself, basically. Bendy and the Ink Machine, if you couldn't figure it out, is like an endless cycle. And like constantly, it's an endless cycle. It constantly repeats. That's what the whole ending is. The item you get accents this because when you go back through past chapters with that item, you can see all the notes that Henry has left himself. And while while that ending could be done well in other games, it just doesn't work here. Here are the two big reasons why. Number one, it was never built up throughout all of the other chapters. This was never foreshadowed. You can't reasonably come to the conclusion that Henry is trapped in an infinite loop until you get to the last chapter where the ending happens and you also get that item. And if you choose to interact with it, you can discern things, I guess. It just feels tacked on. It feels lazy. It feels like they were running out of time and needed they needed an ending, and that was the ending they chose because it's an easy one. It's a cop-out. You can do whatever with it. Also, it retroactively makes them seem like they were foreshadowing it, right? Because you can go through the past chapters and you can see all these writings that you couldn't before. But the truth is, those weren't there until the Chapter 5 update. So in reality, they weren't foreshadowing this at all in any sort of manner until Chapter 5, which is pathetic. If you're going to have an ending like this, you need to foreshadow it in order for it to have any effect at all. And another reason why it doesn't work for me is because I've outlined how the creators didn't really care and were making things up on the fly. The video I talked about by, I can't remember his name, goes into more depth on it. Because I know that, and because of the other thing I mentioned, it just seems like they didn't care and they just threw something together because they needed something. I don't believe that they foreshadowed this, they had this ending in their mind from the very beginning. They're saying that because they have to. If they said, oh yeah, we just made up an ending, that makes what we already have worse, and it makes the public reception that ending got even worse. So they're never going to do that. They're never going to admit that that's what happened, but I don't believe that they actually planned this ending out ahead of time. Obviously, that's just my opinion. You're free to believe whatever you want to believe. Whatever. There's a few other minor nitpicks I have with the game. They overuse that really cliche violin that you hear a lot in TV and film. They're like, it's everywhere throughout this game, and it's really annoying. Especially the tense moments, you can hear it in all the tense music. The animation is bad. There are a few moments where it's okay. Sammy's monologue in front of you, that's fine. Alice's animations when she's behind things in Chapter 3 is fine. The walk animations are fine whenever they are looked at like a preview. Like, they feel like default walk cycles, and they're used like default walk cycles. Like, you know how whenever in Chapter 5 I made a little edit showing how Boris turns and it just doesn't look good because they didn't actually animate a turn, they just turned his model. Also, Boris shaking you at the end of Chapter 3 looks really bad and goes on for a really long time. There's a way you can do that scene better, because that exemplifies the animation problems perfectly. You can have Alice not walk default with a default face. Her face doesn't even animate. I don't even think it blinks. It might blink, I don't know. And you can have Boris shake you a little bit at the beginning until you wake up, and then he sees you wake up and he's like, come on. He like reaches, I keep using the wrong hand. He reaches his hand out to you and he's like, come on, get up, let's go, we gotta go. And then Henry could point out and be like, oh my god, Alice is behind you, she's coming to get you. And she's like running at Boris. And Boris turns around and then looks back at Henry and she keeps trying to get him up so they can run away. And then Alice grabs him and zoink. There's a way to do that scene better. It would have been great if they did it that way. This is not going to be the only video I post here. I have lots of videos planned for the future. Lots of ideas are marinating in my brain and I'm getting anxious to make them. I want to do a video on FNAF. Despite what you may think, I actually do like FNAF. I would eventually like to do a video on Lost in Vivo. Lost in Vivo is a game that means a lot to me, if you couldn't tell by my overuse of it in this video. I used it so much because they're both survival horror games. They're both made by indie dev teams. As far as I know, Akuma Kira did most, if not all, of the work on Lost in Vivo besides the music. And they did a great job for being a one-person team. Compared to Bendy Machine, which had an entire team backing it, but they weren't able to do a good job because of the people running their company, which sucks, because it could have been great. I want to do a video on the horror aspects of Earthbound. I would also like to do a video on The Ring and Ringu, comparing the American original, the Japanese original. But yeah, in general, that's it for me. I hope your day's good. I hope you liked the video. I hope a bunch of things. Bye.